So now you have a mini half wood press, and the bed comes with a covering on it, an industrial plastic covering, sometimes paper on the bottom, and you don't like those, you want to take them off. But before you take them off, it's a good idea to clean the edges up and round the corners, and finally to cover it with some other kind of plastic paper like contact paper. So that's what this demonstration is about. I like to round the corners off, and I need two files. First I start with a coarse rasp file to knock off the main part of the corner. It's a good idea to always go down from the top like this, and be very careful not to go too far on your stroke, in which case you would probably scratch the surface. So you want to be sure that you don't go up too high and go on the surface and scratch your plate permanently. This is polycarbonate. It's a tough plastic, but you can scratch it. To be extra careful, hold the file from below that way. That way there's no chance that you can bounce up here and scratch your plate. The file is called a bastard mill cut file. The teeth, the sharp edge, are pointing in that direction, in the downward stroke. If you use it the wrong way, it won't be very effective. Just remember that the teeth are pointing down, so you would use it that way. The dust from the filing leaves a lot of mess, so it's a good idea to vacuum all that up, otherwise it's going to show up. The bed is 6 inches wide, and so we're going to recover it. I'm going to recover it with some contact paper after I take off the industrial covering. Here's a piece of contact paper that is 9 inches wide, so there's plenty of room on both sides. A little too much room. I like about a half-inch overlap, so I'm going to cut it down to 6.5 inches. And the length of the bed is 14.5 inches. So I'm going to cut a 16-inch length. I'll show you why in a minute. Now I'm ready to attach the contact paper, and I have a little stop along the edge of my table to hold the press steady, because there's going to be some pulling and tugging on it in a minute. There's still a little bit of dust. As soon as I pull off the plastic, I can see some of the sand or the filing dust is still around there, so I have to vacuum that off. All those dust particles will show up underneath the contact paper if you don't get rid of them. The first step is to put the contact paper so the dull side, the non-reading side, is up, and I tape that first end down with some packing tape, wrapping tape, or whatever you call it. Good 2-inch wide, strong tape. Because I'm going to be pulling on that, and I don't want it to move. Then I take my squeegee, move this squeegee aside, and pick on the backing, and I roll that up an inch or two. Then I take the squeegee in my other hand and simultaneously squeegee and pull the backing off so that there's no wrinkling underneath the squeegee's edge. I made a little bit of a jerk there, a little bump, so that left an air bubble. But there's a way to get rid of air bubbles if they occur. They won't squeeze down oftentimes, so it's necessary to take a pointy tool like an etching needle or an X-Acto knife and poke a hole in the bubble and then work the air out into that hole, and then rub it down, and that way the bubble will pretty much disappear. And then finally, take the same X-Acto knife and trim it up. Trim off all the excesses. You remember I left about a ½ inch on the sides and probably an inch or so on the ends of waste. Finally, peel off the underside, or sometimes beds come with paper on the underside too, but this one had a clear plastic, and that's just about finished. What you need for the process are some files. This is a bastard mill cut file. This is a very rough rasp, a straight edge with a ruler, a squeegee. This is a perfect squeegee to use. Hopefully you have one. Utility knife, what do you call these knives? Anyway, you know those knives. Scissors, additional cutting tool, contact paper big enough to cover your bed, your press bed, shipping tape or strapping tape. It's ideal. And of course the press bed. And for cutting out the contact paper, a glass sheet. I noticed that when I put the bed back in and I give the wheel a spin, it goes pretty well and then it stops. So now it's time to fine-tune the measurements for the side of the press. It measures 6 1/16 on both ends, but there's something funny about the way it lines up on the edge. When I put a straight edge up there, there's a gap on one end. That means I need to adjust the nut caps. To adjust the nut cap, I need to take the special customized Phillips driver that goes into a hex wrench like that and loosen it just slightly, take the tension off, and then with the 5/16 wrench turn that in, and that's going to push this side out just slightly, the amount of clearance that I estimate that I need. There. Now it spins freely. Now we drive the cap nut back all the way tight. Just enough tension. Remember, these cap nuts are aluminum, and we don't want to put too much stress on them. Now it rolls freely, the way it should.